Hey there, everyone. It's me, Samuel Broden, and welcome to a brand new season of Honoring Childhood, the podcast, where we have candid and casual conversations on childhood. I am just so excited about all the amazing guests and conversations we're going to be having this season, and I can't wait for you to join us. So, what are you waiting for? Come on, let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Honoring Childhood, the podcast, where we have candid and casual conversations on childhood. I'm so excited for this week's episode and my conversation with Laurel Turnquist. I am so excited to have her here. Hi, Laurel. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk with you today. You want to start by just letting everyone know just a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, of course. My name is Laurel, and I have been very fortunate to have worked with kids for a very, very long time. I started off in kind of the arts world, was teaching a lot of theater and arts education type of programming, and then slowly kind of transitioned into early childhood education. And it was moving into those spaces that I slowly started to think like, oh, what's going on here? And noticing that my space looked very different from other people's spaces and was like, oh, why do we do some of these things? And then slowly started finding amazing play-based educators who are sharing their knowledge and could kind of finally start putting words to what I was doing, and then was able to share with other people like, hey, here's why our space looks different. Here's what we're doing with kids that might be different from what you would see in a traditional preschool setting or what we think of when we think of school. And so kind of started off in those spaces and then really fell in love with the play-based world and then started my own teaching organization. And now I do trainings for parents, kind of on the parenting side, talking a lot about how we move beyond punishments, consequences, rewards, and to solution-focused parenting, where we are really respectful of children while still supporting and meeting their needs. And then getting to teach parents and then other teachers about play and what that looks like, and how we can choose those spaces and how we can actually intentionally create those spaces even at home. And so getting to work both in education settings, but also in a lot of home and family settings as well.
Oh, I love all of that is all of that is music to my ears. I love it. I love it. I love being able to just talk with and know other people who are out there doing the work and doing and with the same goal in mind. So I love all of that, and I'm just so excited about our conversation today. And we're going to be talking all about how we can move from a position of control and being a director to a position of being more of a facilitator. And I'm already on board with this. This is like literally I love this so much. This is so much about what my latest book is about as well. And so I'm just so excited to dive into this conversation with you. So let's just start by what does that even mean when we're saying moving from director to facilitator? What is that meaning?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of the language that I found that really helped me articulate kind of what it looks like to create kind of child-centered spaces and centered that allow for play and
Mm,
moving away from that really controlling setting, kind of what we think of as like a normal preschool setting, right? We all grew up with teachers, we know what school is supposed to look like, and it's really easy to fall into that director role, right? You're
hmm.
saying, here's what we're doing, here's how we're doing it. I'm going to like facilitate this thing. And maybe it's really fun and it's engaging and but it really is a lot about the adult, right? It's about me
Yes.
telling you what to do. And kids can follow along with that. And I'm amazing at that, right? I'm really engaging and I can get them to come in and do it. And it's like, wow, they love it. And I change like volume and we sing. But at the end of the day, it's me being creative. It's me
Hmm.
deciding what we're
Hmm.
doing. And so in those spaces, while we still may be meeting like one goal, right? You're like, yeah, we did this sorting activity and we learned this letter.
Hmm.
We're missing out on all that kids could be doing if we gave them a little bit more freedom. If we said, hey, what could you do with these materials? So they're really not as creative or um, as we would want them to be. And so
Yeah.
from that, we can move more into the role of the facilitator. And so that's where we allow for more play and things like that. And so I found that really helped to articulate that because often we talk about play, we know what play is, we're like we love play-based settings, but that can be really confusing for people the way that we use the word play. And so I'd run into people who say, "Oh yeah, I do that too. We play. We have play
Hmm.
in our setting. Everything is play-based, everything is hands-on." But when you really looked at it, It wasn't self-chosen, self-directed, and
Yes.
intrinsically motivated. And so
Yes.
that's what we mean when we say play. And I definitely want to teach people about play, but I'd often get into these kind of going back and forth with people where like we had a hard time understanding each other because we both had different ideas of play. But I'd
Hmm.
pause and say, well, look at this activity. Is it directed by you or is it directed by the children? Were you the director
Hmm.
or were you the facilitator? And so it really helps people kind of move into the play-based world very easily because you can easily say, ooh, this activity was a lot about me. I decided it was Dinosaur Week. I decided that we were going to do these dinosaur alphabet matching puzzles and that they have to be done this certain way
Hmm.
versus saying, oh, someone was interested in dinosaurs. So I put out these really interesting things and look what they're doing with them. How cool. And so it made
Yes.
it really easy to see how do we slowly move into this world because it's not about like having some specific toy or having some
Hmm.
specific space
Hmm.
or having play can be in any number of spaces with any number of materials and look really different depending on who is in that
Yes.
space.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
And that's so I think that I mean, there's just so much um built into the education system that is kind of founded in that idea of control, right? And you know, you were saying it, you know, our own experiences as children in school, right? That's what it was. That's what the teacher was. The teacher was the one who told us what to do, and it was our job to do what they said. And that was
right,
how we, you know, did good in school, or how we were thought of as a good person, was how well
right,
we were able to follow that. And so I think that there's still so much of that, even in these early spaces. And it is interesting when you have this conversation about play with different people, and you start to see like, huh, it means so. Lots of people have different ideas of what it is, right? And you
right.
go to different programs and they're like, "Oh, play base. Yep, we're play base. Totally. Yeah, yeah." And you're like, "Awesome." And then you go in and you're like, "Well, none of it this is
Yeah,
not."
not one single thing you've
Yeah.
shown me is play. It may be
Yeah.
fun, it may be hands-on, they may all be
Yes.
engaged, but no part of it is play. And so I found that that language was just so helpful because just
Yeah.
very quickly I could say, oh, here, I would love to explain what I mean by that and what we want for children and why. And yeah, I think like when we're hired as a teacher, you feel like you need to be doing stuff. And so you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure that I know what we're learning. We need to learn these letters, these things, this stuff. And so I need to design activities around those things, right? Oh, it's a week and we're learning about dinosaurs and we're doing these gross motor skill things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you feel like, okay, I'm the teacher, so I have to be doing those things. And it's
Yes.
like, well, but what does it look like to instead facilitate a space? Because we're not doing nothing. It does not mean, oh, here we just move over here and start doing
Mm-hmm.
nothing,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is certainly not the answer either. And so how can we let go of this while still being very intentional in the work that we do
Yeah.
with kids, very intentionally curating spaces for them, very
Mm-hmm.
intentionally observing what they're doing, very intentionally documenting what they're doing so that we can share those things. And again, as soon as we're not stuck over at the math table making them do this one sorting activity, you can sit there and document the cool things they're doing. You can
Mm-hmm.
sit there and engage in really amazing conversations. You can sit there and do these things and then you can see what's happening beyond just like, well, okay, they all memorized A, maybe because it's out of
Yeah.
context. They
Right.
probably didn't
Right.
anyways. But you can say, oh, wow, look at all the cool things they do. And sometimes it's also really helpful to say, well, what is the end goal, right? Because
Right.
when we just have this list of criteria, you're like, well, I met them. And I always say, like, my goal is to help raise kids who are kind, wise, and resilient while
Mm-hmm.
being curious, creative, and capable. And so you're like, oh, okay, how do we do those things? Because if your goal is like, my goal is to have you memorize these 5 letters as fast as possible,
Yeah.
then maybe your setting would look different, right? But when you think like, my goal is to help you live in the world as a person who is true to yourself, living your best
Mm-hmm.
life while being kind and responsible and respectful. And being in that facilitator state allows for that because that's when you get to build all of those amazing skills. And so a lot of people push back. They're like, well, why does it matter if you're in the director space, right? You should be teaching, you should be doing these
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, well, yeah, you did learn, like, but in spite of what was happening, not because of what was happening.
Yes.
You learned the
Yes.
one skill, but yeah, at the expense of being curious or creative or learning
Mm-hmm.
to direct your own time.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the things that help you be successful more than just memorizing things early on, right? Memorization isn't necessarily a skill we need anymore. We all have a computer in our hand
Right.
all the time.
Right.
But being able to think, being able to
Hmm.
collaborate, being able to regulate your own emotions, know when to step back in a situation, but also knowing when to step up and advocate for yourself as well, right? That's what happens when children are given that time to play, where they are in that state that they are directing their own time. They have to
Hmm.
say, no, I don't want to be the dog right now. I wanted to be the
Yes.
grandma. And then
Hmm.
they have to sit there and figure that out. Like, and they have to do that for themselves. And someone else has to step back and be like, okay, fine, I want to keep playing. I'll let you be the grandma instead of the dog, right?
Yeah.
They take the time to do those things and build those amazing skills. And then in addition, another piece of like pushback I get is people say, well, I have kids who really need that structure and they
Yes.
love when they're told
Yes.
what to do. And that is true. There are always going to be those kids who are kind of quiet, compliant, do the things, really like
Hmm.
that. And you're like, well, actually, those are the kids who need you to back off even more. They need even more space to grow into themselves, to learn to
Yes.
say, what do I find interesting? What would
Hmm.
I like to do right now? What can I do with these materials? Right? They have to, because, we've all been told our whole life, sit here, stand
Yep.
here, go to the bathroom at this time, eat at this time.
Hmm.
And those kids who seem like that works really, really well for them actually need a lot more space to grow into like themselves and into
Yes.
who they are. And so I love because people bring that up a lot, but like it really works for a lot of kids. And you're like, yes. And those are the kids who need
Yes.
that space the least, need us to
Yes.
give them that space. And it might take a little bit of encouraging on the other side
Hmm.
where they need a little bit of direction at first and a little bit of curation at first because they're like, I don't know what to do with a pile of loose parts in
Yeah.
30 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Like, but they will grow into that when given that space. And it's so cool to watch when you've seen kids who like
Yes.
have that personality or have come from a really structured background. Once they're like grow into that of like, oh, I now have an hour and I can fill that hour. It's like, wow,
Yes.
look at how cool
Yes.
that is. And so that's why. Because again, people will always be like, but why does that matter? Like, I love
Yeah.
Pinterest activities. I love these
Yeah. Yeah.
Instagram
Yeah.
accounts that have all this stuff. And you're like, well, it's actually limiting kids. And if you love that
Hmm.
stuff, like you love crafts, like do the crafts, model that for kids, model that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
hobbies.
Yeah.
Don't make kids do them, right?
Yes.
And I think that's why it's like it takes a little bit of like, why do we want to move beyond that? And then what does it look like to actually
Hmm. Hmm.
facilitate things? Because it really isn't like it's hard when you talk about like, well, play-based spaces, we give kids control. People think, well, if I just step back and do nothing, right? Like my
Hmm.
director's going to walk in, my parents are going to walk in. People are like, what do I do? And so then it's like, okay, finding things to do. Well, it's like, well, number one, you just curate the space really, really well.
Yeah.
You just create a space that has interesting materials that you put out and say, huh, what did people do with this?
Hmm.
What do you need more of? What can we change? What can I give you? What do you need? And observing them and creating these really, really cool spaces and sometimes I could be thinking about like, well, okay, what are like the six categories of rough and tumble play? And how do I make sure those are in our space? How do I give
Hmm.
you heights? How do I give you speed? How do I give you access to kind of those dangerous materials, right? How do I add those to the space? And so then you're like, okay, I can frame it that way. And that gives me something to be doing. Or
Yes.
taking that
Yes.
time and saying, oh, I take that time and we make really cool observations and really document this really, really well so that I can share it with even the students themselves. They love
Yeah.
seeing their own work and then share it with other
Yeah.
people. But
Yeah.
finding ways to be busy, it's not that we're doing nothing, just
Yes.
that we're not doing what we were doing before.
Yes. It's always so interesting to me to kind of hear these pushbacks, right? When we talk about this type
Right.
of thing, right? It's for me, at least in my experience, it's always like, well, you let the kids do whatever they want. Now they're not going to listen and they're not going to be respectful. Or, well, I'm the teacher, so they won't know what to do if I don't tell them. All these
Right.
different things, and it's just like it's so interesting to me that so many of those are our own issues
Right.
and have nothing to do with what's actually happening, right? And so I always find it interesting that it's this idea that giving children more control, allowing for more child-led space is always correlated with like, well, that's why they're not going to listen, or that's why they don't know what to do. And it's like, or, you just let them do whatever they want. And it's like, it's not really about, I mean, the way it's phrased makes it sound not good. But it's also
Yeah.
like sometimes I would say people like, I mean, yeah, they can technically do whatever they want.
Right.
Like we all could do whatever we want. That's kind of
Yeah.
life, right? But what we're creating here is a space where they can think more for themselves. They can
Mhm.
decide things they want to do, and we can have conversations about
Right.
how we want things to be in here. So it's not like it's just, yeah, go ahead and you could just go and, trash everything and hit everyone just
Right.
because you want to. We're having conversations about what we want our space to look like. Our space to look like, not
Right.
mine. And so it's interesting to kind of just break that down for folks because
Yeah.
there's always that like automatic, well this, well this, well this, well this, right? And it's like let's just take a pause and kind
Right.
of think about, and I mean you said it really great, but it's like what is that experience you want the kids to have?
Yeah.
How do you want them to feel when they're with you? What do you want them to gain? What are your goals for them, right? And I think that if you center so much of what you're doing in what is that experience, that's going to help kind of guide you into what you're doing.
Right. Well, just starting with the understanding that kids are deserving of respect and they are
Mm-hmm.
capable. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you start from there and you build on that, then you can say, oh, how do I create a space that allows children to be capable and honors them in that? How do I
Mm-hmm.
create a space that is respectful of children? And then pretty much just like helping children learn that, like, wow, what is a way that we can say yes to this? How can we find a way
Yeah.
to say yes to what's going on? And then in that, you build situational awareness because just
Mm-hmm.
having a rule to have a rule is like, oh, huh, I see this, and that. Why might not that work? Oh, smashing the blocks on the window. Huh, what could happen? Yeah, okay, well, let's try something else. Or where else could we move it? It's just like, well, how could I say yes to you right now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
not, oh, the blocks can only ever be built this high because I said so. It's, well, why would we think that now? And why might that be different another time, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
nothing is ever always right or always wrong.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
everything is situational. And so creating spaces where it's like, well, our only rule is that like people are not for hurting, right?
Yeah.
Beyond that, you say, well, how could we say yes to that?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you know what? Maybe we didn't find a way we could say yes to that. Let's write a little note and let's take that when we go outside to remind ourselves that we wanted to run or we wanted to, whatever
Mm-hmm.
it is of like, which again, if you can't run in an indoor space for an entire day,
Yeah.
that's a really inappropriate expectation for
Yes.
children. Like,
Yes.
find a way to say yes to that. But
Mm-hmm.
really being like, oh, everything we do, we can have a conversation about. And because I'm not stuck over at the math table making them do this one worksheet the right way, being
Mm-hmm.
so stuck over here that I can't know what's going on. It's like, oh, cool, we can like be part of what's happening in the classroom and
Yes.
seeing what's going on and making observations over time of like, oh, this always happens. But then
Uh-huh.
knowing I don't control you, I just control me. Did I need to change how our day is flowing? Do I need to change what's out? Do I need to change how I'm speaking to you? Do I need to change how our
Mm-hmm.
furniture is arranged, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looks like to facilitate of saying like, I see what's going on and I'm reflective. Our day went
Yes.
well. Why? Our day we had a few bumps in here. Why? Oh, do we just need more training? Are we just all 3-year-olds who like are just working on some stuff right now? It's like, great, how can I facilitate that? Like, and so it's just being so much of being a facilitator is just being reflective, right?
Yes.
Saying, yep, okay, what can I change?
Mm-hmm.
How can I support them in doing these things without saying like, oh, I need to make rules or I need to decide or we just need more structure or more activities or me just like if we just had little quiet centers and they all changed
Mm-hmm.
when I rang the
Mm-hmm.
bell, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, that might be great for keeping everyone quiet, but is it great for meeting our long-term goals of like helping you grow into a curious, creative, capable person?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Like,
And that whole idea of reflection is just so important because I feel like so often, and I'm always speaking from my own experience because that was me, right, when I
that's me
started.
too.
And it's so funny that you said that about like the centers and the bell because it was literally what I did, and I thought that that was like the best idea ever. Everyone had, okay, we have four different color
Yep.
whiteboard markers, so this is team red, and okay, now move to the next thing. And I was just like, look how great everyone's doing. It's so nice in here. And so it's all about kind of just like the journey, right? We do the best we can with the knowledge that we have, but I think that that reflection is so important because so often, whenever things are going in a way that we don't want them to, the blame is always on to the children, right? It's
Yep.
their behavior, it's their this, it's their this, and there's never any like self-reflection to what am I bringing to this space? What am I
Right.
creating in this space? What am I maybe doing or not doing that is causing these things to happen? And so I think when we're able to start breaking down that and breaking down that wall, because that's hard too, being able to reflect and recognize that maybe I did something, maybe it
Yep.
was me. That could be hard to do because again, a lot of us didn't have that experience as
Right.
kids. We didn't see adults having that experience. It was, I mean, when you ask an adult as a kid, like, why are we doing this? You don't need to know why. I'm
Yeah.
telling you why, right? And so it's a journey for us now as adults to kind of unlearn that and relearn things. And so I think that that's such an important part of it because so much of what goes on in the room and what goes on in the classroom is from what we've curated and what we're bringing into the space. And so I just think that's such an important part of that.
Oh, yeah. And I think so much of how we view children in our society is like, you're the child, I'm the adult, I'm in
Hmm.
control, you listen to me, you do the thing now because I said so. And I work on the parenting side, and so much of what we see over there is just these compliance-based tactics of like,
Yes.
how do I use love withdrawal or shut you in your room until you're kind enough to come back out, right?
Hmm.
And that is so much of how we control things in the classroom as well. And so it's like, ooh, actually really learning the idea of like the only person you control is you.
Hmm.
And so when you go into it being like, okay, I'm going to try and control kids or make them do and make it their problem, you're going to be really frustrated. They're going to be really frustrated. You're going
Hmm.
to have to use rewards, punishments, bribes, whatever to get them to do those things,
Yes.
as opposed to saying, I only control me. What can I be doing right now? Well, and as the adult,
Hmm.
I also control the space. So like I control me and I control the space. What can I be doing right now? Because
Hmm.
I can't make you stop screaming. I can't make you walk. I can't make you poop. I can't make you all
Yeah.
these things we think we can make kids do, right? If we just and you're like, I can't do that. And
Hmm.
that does not mean we do whatever. It means,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what part do I control, right? Like,
Hmm.
again, you're screaming in the library. I can't make you stop screaming, but I can remove us from the library, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is the part that so it's like, what part of this do I control and how can I
Hmm.
support you in that? And then often being respectful enough to engage with children and have conversations and take time every day. I love seeing classrooms that have class meetings where they sit and they chat and they talk and people bring up issues and they spend time every day like being like, well, what do you think? What would be a solution to that?
Yeah.
What could we do? And giving children time to think about things is really
Hmm.
cool to be like,
Yeah.
they come up with some weird and interesting things and you're like, okay,
Yes.
that's a really great one. Let's try it. Let's try that for the next
Yes.
couple days. When we have our next class meeting, we'll check in and see how it's going.
Yes.
And just knowing that they are so capable of doing that, but that all of these things take so much time and so much practice. So again,
Hmm.
when people are like, look at what all kids can do in school, they know these colors and these numbers and these shapes and all these things that we like drilled into them. And you're like, only in one context and not in relation
Yes.
to their life at all. So probably not really, but also
Yes.
at the expense of having time. And
Exactly.
when children are given time to play, when you've stepped back, you've become that facilitator, that's when they can take that time. It takes a lot of time to learn how
Hmm.
to like manage yourself. It takes a lot of time to learn how to solve problems. Like, it takes a lot of time to learn how to be disappointed when your block tower falls down and you're angry. Like,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes a lot of time to do all of those things. And so we want to give them as much of that time as we can. And that's totally possible when we just learn to let go, step back,
Yes.
and then let go of what other people are going to think. But
Yes.
being articulate enough to be like, oh, our class looks like this because when I allow the children to lead in this way,
Hmm.
look at these cool things they did. I have this photo of this thing, I have this description, I can tell you about it. Look what's happening when we play, when children are allowed to use this space how they would like, right? They're
Hmm.
actually still learning all of those academic skills, just in a context that they find interesting. They are learning shapes, they're learning numbers, they're learning colors because all of that stuff exists around us. I mean, if there wasn't a context where it existed, right, why would we be learning it, right?
Exactly.
So if there is a context where it exists, why don't we learn it in that context?
Yes.
And
I love
supposed to be
that.
like, we looked at the triangle on the thing versus being
Yeah,
like, oh, we're
totally.
chatting about the thing we made or the thing we see or,
Hmm.
you know.
And it's such
So they will learn
it's
those things because all of these things, these skills that we want for them, are real life things that we encounter every day. We have to
yes.
count the number of kids who are here and talk about how many chairs we'll need and how many napkins we'll need. We
Hmm.
talk about the colors that we see when we find little cicadas outside, right? We all of these things will come up because we live in the world. So
Yes.
doing them in a
Yes.
really odd, isolated context one doesn't really work, but then it's at the expense of allowing
Hmm.
this other time to happen.
Yes.
Um,
And
yeah,
it's such a powerful experience for the children to be in a space like this. And that's the thing that I think was most, I guess, surprising to me when I made this shift and when I started respecting the children more and starting letting them lead and all of these things was there was a part of me at the beginning that was fearful of what it was going to be like and what was going to happen,
right.
and there was so many outside voices telling me like, nope, they're going to be out of control, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, and I was like, I really feel like this is right, but what if all
Right.
these people are right, you know?
Yeah.
But doing it and seeing the powerful experience that the children had and seeing just how much more empathetic they were, how they were better at advocating for themselves and
Right.
for other people, and how much how kind they were, and how much they took care of each other, and how much they trusted themselves, and all these things that maybe we don't even know about ourselves as
Right.
adults because we didn't have seeing them grow into that is just like I can't even explain how amazing it is to see that. And those
Yeah.
things don't really happen when we're controlling everything,
Yeah.
when we're telling them what to do. And so being able to see that shift and being able to create that type of environment is just it's a really powerful experience, and it gives the kids so much that's going to carry with them forever, you know. And I tell this story all the time, but there was a girl in one of my classes, and I had encouraged them to advocate for themselves and tell me if I did something that upset them, and we had conversations, all of that. And her family was all on board. So year goes on, she moves on, she goes to elementary school. I get a message from the mom saying that she got in trouble at school, and I didn't understand why because this girl was like, you know, poster child for like a great kid.
Yeah.
And it was basically she had got in trouble because she had advocated for herself because she didn't like the way the teacher said something to her. And she said,
Oh,
in a respectful way, I didn't like the way you said that. Could you say it nicer? And the teacher got her in trouble and said she was disrespectful. And so the mom told me that obviously she didn't get the girl in trouble, and she
right.
was like, that was the right thing to do. But it's like that showed me that that was the goal that I had for those kids. That's what
Yeah.
I wanted them to be able to do.
Yeah.
And so because we created a space like that, it was able to carry with them for however, like that's going to stick with them, and she's going to know that, and she's going to know that she has a voice. And so it's like going back to what is it that you're wanting out of these kids? I don't, their letters, their numbers, whatever. They're going to, all that's coming. They're going to
Yeah.
learn all that. But
Well,
that is,
that's so cool when you actually get to see it, where you're like, I don't know, I see
yes.
kind of what happens in the future.
Yeah.
But really, that's what's so cool about spaces where when we let go of that traditional director role, right? When we move into these other spaces, we actually like decentralize, right? This focus on just academic skills, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, colors, numbers, shapes, maths, reading, all these things, and seeing that there's so much more beyond that, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of these things that are really hard for us to like, test. And so they don't really come up and aren't seen as important, but being like, wow, are you an empathetic person? Can you
Mm-hmm.
communicate? Can you regulate yourself? Can you advocate for yourself? Are you curious? Are you creative? Do you know your interests? Have you been given time to understand that you have interests in things? Can you find joy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a really important thing in like the way that the world is now and how things can be really hard. Like, do you know how to find joy? Do you
Mm-hmm.
know things that bring you joy?
Mm-hmm.
And then understanding that, yeah, again, we live in a world where you will be exposed to all of these things. It would
Uh-huh.
be very hard not to learn them, right?
Yes.
Um, and we still intentionally talk about things in context as they come up.
Yeah.
I'm not like, I never
Yeah.
mentioned anything. And,
Yeah, totally.
it's like,
We
obviously,
don't
we have
ever talk
conversation.
about
Obviously,
letters.
when they're interested, it's not like, I never decided. It's like, you're interested in dinosaurs? Of course, I'll get some dinosaur
Yeah,
books. Not
yeah,
like,
yeah,
well, we don't
yeah.
have any. Like, that would
Yeah.
be crazy. So we obviously do all that as well, but understanding that like that doesn't have to be the focus. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things I love doing in the facilitator role is taking that time to document and observe. And one of the easiest ways to do that sometimes can just be by starting tying what they're doing to the four domains of development. To where
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, look at this. What are we doing cognitively? What are we doing socially, emotionally? What do I see growing physically? What are you doing in all of these things with like language and literacy skills.
Hmm.
And then really making sure that I like make it really heavy on these skills that are not just like, oh, well, I saw that they said the word red. Where
Yeah.
you still have that. So you're like, hey, look, this is still happening. But
Hmm.
look at all the other things happening in addition. When we can do this, both things can happen. And so then you're like, oh, wow, cool. I can show you how we're developing across all domains of development
Hmm.
while still making sure I highlight that little part, but it doesn't become just that. And
Yeah.
again, I wish that we could just say, hey, let's play because it brings children joy and helps them live their best life. I understand we have to like help explain it a little bit more, but when you
Hmm.
can tie it to those more kind of abstract skills and say, look at how they're growing as a person and as a human being, and even
Yes.
physically, not just, wow, they are the first one to write their name. Like,
Yep.
they're so smart, they're so advanced, they're so this, they need, like, oh, that's really cool. I'm really excited for them. They were really
Yeah.
excited about that, and they spent a lot of time working hard on that. How
Hmm.
cool. Like, beyond that, like, I- whatever,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. No,
Uh,
that's so yes. And it's like I also find it interesting too that I realize this for myself. It's not fun to be controlling all the time. It's not fun to constantly stop play. It's not fun
right.
to always be on edge thinking about what can't they do? They can't do this. They can't move that there. They can't, and
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
like once I was able to let go of that, it's like now I'm actually able to actually enjoy my time here with them. Like,
And not be like, oh no, Todd's going to be here today. It's going to be a horrible day. Like already going
oh my
into it,
God.
deciding, and then
Yes.
already at 3 years old, having them labeled as bad.
Yes.
Like you are
Yes.
not bad. Like please don't ever.
Yes.
And that follows them. Like that follows them.
Oh, it
Yeah.
totally does. And that is every time I hear someone say that, it just like breaks my heart. And I'm just like, but it's also, yeah, what do you expect the day to be like then, if that's what you're
Right.
already saying? Or how do you expect this child to respond to you if they just heard you say that to them or no, even if they can't hear you talking
Oh,
like
they pick up
they
on it. Thank you, Tina, for sitting so nicely. Thank you, Peter, for sitting so nicely.
yes.
Oh, Todd, you finally joined us. Thank you. And you're like, oh, how
Yes.
positive is that? And you're like, oh, he gets it. Like that's
Yes.
not
And
respectful or
like
kind at all. Like, I'm sorry, let's not
no.
pretend. Yeah.
And what do you expect him to behave like? How do you expect him to interact with you if that's how it
Right.
is? How would you do that, right? So it's just once we're able to just like fully enjoy our time with these kids and be there to help guide them and support them, but allow them to make
Yeah.
these mistakes, allow them to learn about their interests, allow them all this. It's just I don't know, it just makes such a better experience for everybody.
Oh, yeah. And then you even think of like outside of the classroom, you're not spending hours and hours cutting out little things and prepping
Oh my
and
gosh,
not saying
yes.
like this is not a laziness thing. It's just like that is you spend all these like doing all this stuff setting up because every activity is so themed and so and you're laminated 12 sheets
Yep.
and then you're exhausted and you're just like, "Oh man, that's a really great way to burn out very quickly."
Yeah, and then you
Um,
get super frustrated and mad the next day when no one cares about
Yeah,
any
they
of the
didn't want
stuff.
you had to force them to come to the little craft
Yes,
table, and they had to leave
exactly.
their like 6-story structure that like required 12 people and a bunch of engineering. But
Yes.
they need to glue that leaf on the tree and label the stem,
Yes.
and you're like, oh, okay,
Yes.
cool, yeah.
Yes. It's so
Um,
I don't know.
but
It's a hard thing to do because it's been so wired into us, right? Throughout our
right,
whole entire life. And especially like those of us who knew for a long time that we wanted to be teachers, right? That was the idea that we had in our head
yes.
was this is what a
Mhm.
teacher is. I'm going to
Yeah,
do
I
exactly
I
what
saved
this
all my
teach.
Pinteresty things. I know what little
Yes.
act, and it's fun. You're like, oh yay, it's fall. We get to do all this fun
Yeah.
stuff. Like, look at what we're like. Yeah, I think I have that personality, so I have to fight
Yeah,
against
totally.
that even more.
Totally.
And but I think really just that's really simple language shift of like, director, facilitator. Okay, what could I instead just put out for them?
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to start right there. Okay. Put this out and see what they do with it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. Perfect. That's first step of facilitating is just stepping back, but okay, I'll
Yes.
put these things out, see what they do. Okay, cool.
Yes.
And you're like, simple shift. Okay, instead of me
Mm-hmm.
telling them what to do, we're just going to put it out. Okay, well, how can I put out even less like materials that are less directive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's try that. And just slowly moving in that direction of like, okay, let go of needing to control it and letting children do what they
Mm-hmm.
do with it, right?
Yes, yes. And
Um,
it's something that like really helped me out with all of this through this whole process was actually just talking with the kids about it. Like talking
yeah.
with them and saying like, listen, I know that this is how we do things. I'm really trying to do things this way. I want to do things a little
Yeah.
bit differently. This is what I'm going to try to do. What do you think about it? Can you help me with it? All these things, like having them through the process as well, can be
Yeah.
really helpful. And also, just again, it's that collaboration with them, right? Where it's like, this is what we're doing. I
Right.
want to hear from you, because that was the most
Yeah.
interesting thing I noticed too, was like, sometimes when you invite that conversation with the kids, or you're asking them, what do you think? Tell me what you want to do. Sometimes they're like, wait, what? What do you want me to tell you no, or you want me to tell you I don't want this? Or so
Yeah.
they're having to kind of work through things too, because they don't have that kind of experience probably anywhere
Right.
else but in here. So it's something that we're all working on together. And so I think being able to just involve them in that too, and just
Yeah.
be honest about like, this is what I'm trying to do, or I shouldn't have done that. I know that I'm
Yeah.
trying to do something different. I'm sorry that I did that. Let's see how I can,
Yeah.
all of these things. It all just creates such a powerful experience for
But
them.
like, what a cool thing that, like, as people who work with kids, we are creators of culture and we get to model growth, right? We don't even have to be like, wrong, I was wrong. And but it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, I did something. Now I'm going to try something else. They're like, you know what? That actually really wasn't a great thing to do. Let's try
Hmm.
this. Or even just modeling, like, I want to hear what you have to say. It's having class meetings is so fun and watching like the solutions they come up with, right? I remember
Yes.
one where it was like, they were playing this like dinosaur and like wolf game and it was scaring some kids and some kids didn't like it and so like other teachers in the playground had just been like we're not allowed to play that, we'll shut it down if you start playing that,
Yeah.
you got to stand on it. It's this whole thing. So we're like, well, let's just have a meeting about it. And so we just sat down and we're like, well, let's just chat about this. How do people feel about this? And so people got to say, here's why we play, and other people got to say, well, here's how that makes me feel when you play that way. And then it was like, well, what can we do? And they
Hmm.
came up with this whole list of really cool things. But if I'd been like, now here's the rule, you can't
Yep.
do like it, they wouldn't have followed any of that, but they all like heard from each other. And this is like a group of
Hmm.
4-year-olds, right? All heard from each other and then all wanted, they were like, oh, well, instead of that, we could try this, or maybe we could go up and ask them before we do and see if they're playing. And it
Hmm.
was this whole thing. Like, I was like, oh, I would have done some like punish-based compliance thing.
Totally.
Like, you were
Yes.
bad, stand on the fence until you can like, and they
Yes.
figured it out and they like went back out there. And of course, they still had a lot of bumps, but like, they
Hmm.
went back out there and tried it and they all started. I think the thing they decided they wanted to do is ask, like, well, are you playing? And is it
Yeah.
okay if
Yeah.
I'm the wolf? Like, you know, and it was so cool because real conversations allow them to be, it's like, well, you want to raise problem solvers? Allow them to solve problems. Like,
Yes. And like
involve them in
what?
those things. And I think, again, it's so easy to be like, I'm the teacher and we have the rules and
Yep.
we can't let
Yep.
that happen. Now we're going to send a letter home about what's been going on about it.
Hmm.
And it's this whole thing of
Hmm.
like, okay, like, great. I'm not just like, do anything and disrespect other, like, we're
Hmm.
just playing. So that, but it's like, okay, well, what can we do? And again, we take the time to sit and chat. Like
Yes.
real
Yes.
conversations are so fun at that age of, I mean, at any age, but really allowing them to start having them when that is very rare for children at
Yeah.
that age to
And that's
have
such a
those
and
conversations.
And that's such an amazing, like, life lesson for them to, even just in that example, right? I had the same kind of situation when we kind of worked through weapon play and the
Yeah.
children playing like that, and having conversations with them about it, as opposed to shutting it down, which doesn't work.
Yep.
Or I wouldn't have to shut it down 10 times a day. But
Yeah.
having conversations with them, they were able to figure out ideas of consent and advocacy and all these things
Yeah.
that I knew I wanted them to learn, but I had no idea how to best teach it to them, right? But then it's
Right.
like, when we just let it happen, and then I was hearing them have those conversations as they were playing without me interfering. I was hearing them say, "Did you ask that person? They said no. They want to move away. How are you feeling?" All of these things I was hearing them say, and I was like, would they have even done that
Yeah.
if I would have just stopped it and not given them the space? And so it's really just, I don't know, it's amazing.
Yeah, it is so cool. And then also just being like, again, because I'm not so like, we have our little schedule and I'm following it. You have the
Uh-huh.
time to be like, oh, it's not just like they're just going to automatically play and that's going to give them all the skills they need. It's like, oh, I facilitate a little bit. Did you hear when they said that? What do you think
Mm-hmm.
that means? What
Mm-hmm.
do you think they need from you? Do you think that let's ask them, did they like that? Like where you have the ability to be really present and to like help as they're
Yes.
building all of those skills. And again, it just takes so much time. And so then when they don't have that, and then we get to third grade, and then every Friday they do their 20 minutes of social emotional curriculum learning with the puppets, and then we
Yeah.
wonder why they're having all these problems. You're just like, because you have to be given a lot of time to practice these things and a lot of like
Hmm.
facilitation in the moment, right? Not just like your little puppets on Friday when you like thought through, like which isn't
Yeah.
necessarily bad. That's great. Do more, but like having that time to like be
Hmm.
like it took 700 iterations of trying this thing and of doing
Yeah.
this thing and of like crying and screaming in someone's face and then coming back and saying yourself of like doing all that to like
Hmm.
grow and be a person who can be around other people, right? Who
Yes.
can be that collaborative person who can communicate, which really you think of like 21st century skills, it's like, can you
Hmm.
collaborate? Can you communicate? Are you creative? And do you have critical thinking, right?
Hmm.
Those are the skills you need. And it's like, well, how do we foster those? How do we
Yeah.
give time and space for those? And it's like, well, children have to be given some freedom and some autonomy to grow into
Hmm.
that. And it's like, yeah, that might look like taking all of the blocks and bringing them to the kitchen, but
Hmm.
it's okay if the blocks are out of the block center. Check yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay if the
Yes.
paints get mixed. It's okay if
Yes.
you're like, okay, that's on still on a tile floor. It's okay if the like sand is moved over there or if
Yeah.
the Play-Doh's over there. And if not, it's like, oh, they're really wanting to do that. Can we take that outside? Can we do what can we do
Yes.
here? Like, but just like checking myself because I think so much of the time when I want to be really controlling, it's like, I actually didn't need to be. It just
Hmm.
felt like I
Yeah.
I just did. Like,
Yes. Yes. That's
so,
that's that's totally it. And I think it's too that idea that um I don't know, a lot of times when I talk about stuff like this, it's always like this assumption that like we did it, I talked about it with them, and now everything is great and they do everything and it's perfect. But it's
right.
like this is a constant thing all the time.
Yeah,
Just like I have to remind myself of things as an almost 40-year-old person,
right.
these children also need that, right? We're all working through this together. So it's not
Mhm.
like we all sat down and we were like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. I want you to choose what you're doing. I want everyone to, and then it's like, all right, go. And then I don't say anything else about it again.
Right.
It's a constantly evolving journey, but it's about being involved in it with them,
Yeah,
involving them in the conversations about what's happening, getting their opinion, hearing their views. All of those things are part of what we're talking about because it's about creating a space that isn't just my space. Like this is
yeah,
not just my space. This space belongs to all of us.
right,
And I want to hear what I want to hear what you have to say. And that's the thing too. If you're going to say that, you have to actually want to know what they have to say.
right.
Because again, the kids are not dumb. They can tell. They
Yeah,
can tell when you're just talking to just talk. So if you're going to do these things, you have to make sure that you actually mean it and that you
right.
actually care about what they have to say or and you're not just doing it to say that like, "Oh yeah, well I asked them and they wanted all these rules, but I asked them and, you know, it's like come, and a lot of times I see that, right? With this like, "Oh, we don't have rules anymore. I talked with them and we came up with all of these ourselves." But then I look at them and they're all the same
Yeah,
rules
right.
at every class. I'm like, did you talk to them or did you just were you like, don't you think we should have walking feet? Yep,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
going up.
excellent. We all thought of that together.
Yeah,
Great.
exactly.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
but that I mean, it does. It takes a lot of work because most of it is our own
right,
self-reflection. It's our own unlearning. It's our own, figuring out why we do these things, why what we want. It's a lot of that self-work, and so it can be hard. And it can be hard if there's no one else around you doing that, right?
right,
If you're trying to make these changes. So it's definitely a journey, but it's something that not only changed like my practice, right? But it really did just change my life and how I interact
right.
outside of the classroom, how I interact with my family, how I interact with my friends. All the things that I've shifted or relearned or learned with and from the kids have bled into my own life.
Oh, yeah, the same way. I'm like, well, why am I controlling in that way? Why does that trigger me in this way?
Hmm.
Why do I want to rush in and say no? Like, or why am I having a hard time finding the language to help facilitate this discussion? What learning do I need to go to, or resources do I need to be able to talk about this thing that's I didn't know would be hard for me? And really just growing in that. And again, I think that that's what I love is like just being reflective and saying, "Oh, cool, like how do we all grow in these spaces together?" And in that process of reflecting, it's like letting go, I think, of like adult gaze, right? This fear of like what other people think of like other teachers, other people in our systems, maybe even parents, while still learning how to best articulate why we do what we do, so that
Hmm.
when people come to you, I don't have to be like nervous or scared anymore. I can say, "Oh, I would love to talk to you about why we do this. I would
Hmm.
love to share how our day is going and why it looks like this." Instead of me telling them how to glue these pieces on, I just put out some really cool collage materials and this is what happened and here's how long they were here and here's how the
Hmm.
conversations they had and here's all that went on in that and I can share
Yeah.
that with them. And it definitely takes a little bit, but just really becoming comfortable in ourselves is how we can like
Hmm.
really stand behind the work that we do and
Hmm.
then really help other people see that. Because then I'm like, okay, I don't have, because when I first started this work, I was like, oh gosh, like I really dislike how that looks or why we're doing that or like mine looks so different. And I was like struggle because I'm like, oh gosh, if the director walked in and this is what it
Hmm.
looks like, or
Hmm.
if, but then once I slowly started finding the language for the thing and got comfortable in explaining it or why I was doing what I was doing, I was like, oh, I don't feel nervous about this anymore. People will
Hmm.
disagree with me and people will have, there will be spaces that I won't be hired to work in because of what my style is.
Hmm.
That's okay. But also understanding like, great, I can tell you why I do what we do. And I would love to tell you why we do what we do because I would love for you to understand why we do that.
Yeah.
There's never, I've definitely had people like, oh, having to talk to parents of this is like this, that. And you're like, I mean, yeah, that like we are here to educate them. As a
Yeah.
professional in the field,
Yeah.
I'm here to share why we do what we do, and
Hmm.
I would love to do that. Like they might not always be kind in the ways they speak to us or the ways they address things, but most of them just want to know what's happening, and
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, yeah, I can do
Yes.
that. I can tell you why our space looks different and why there seems to be a lot of choice in here and why choice is
Yes.
better than them sitting on this little app, doing
Yep.
little reading exercises. I
Hmm.
could totally explain that to you.
Yes. And that's one of my favorite things to do, honestly, because seeing their reaction to like, oh wow, I didn't know that, or oh wow, they're doing that, or even just them seeing the difference in their children, right? Like, oh,
Right.
my child is so much more confident, or my child is, all these things, and you're like, yeah, that's what all
Yeah.
this is, and so it's really great to see people really start to click with, oh
Uh,
wow, this
Well, and I
is
understand that like a worksheet with the letter A looks like something. And I understand that when I send home a piece of paper covered in a puddle of glue that took 4 weeks to dry, that doesn't look like anything to you. I
Mhm.
understand that outside of this field, you probably don't have an understanding of that. But I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
if I could just put like one little note and be like, here's this really cool story of how this happened and why, like it's like, oh, okay, cool. You can bring meaning to things that you're like, that doesn't look like anything. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Which is funny because
Yes.
you're like, that worksheet looks like something, but they probably didn't learn any of the things you thought they did. They were wiggling,
Exactly.
falling out of their chair. They have no shoulder stability, couldn't hold the pencil, and don't know what letter it is. But
Exactly.
it looks like something. And it's like, but. So
Yes.
it's just
Yeah,
like, oh, I
exactly.
can't expect you to know that, or even someone who wasn't there to know the cool story of this thing that
Yes.
happened.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah,
so.
definitely. It's yeah, yeah. That A that you think that they know everything about, put it after the M and then see if they know
Right,
what
but
it
it's like the funny idea about being like they know the alphabet, and I was like
Oh
they can sing
yeah.
a song which is lovely, and I was like they
Yes.
also can sing a Taylor Swift song. Do you think they understand what that song means?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's like super fun that they love music and we're like not a bad
Yes.
thing, but you're like, do they understand that that is the word for a letter that makes a sound that combines with other letters to make words which are symbols of real like
Yes.
no, but it's
It's
fine.
so
This is where we
funny.
start. But like, don't
Yes.
pretend that they're like, oh my gosh, they
Yeah.
they know the know what about the alphabet?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
great,
Exactly.
yeah. They also have memorized this what would be a fairly inappropriate song if they knew what it meant, but like
Yeah,
they just know the
exactly.
words, right?
That is so funny. Oh my
Um,
gosh.
so
This was great, but I want to just say if we talked about so much and I love it all. What if there was one thing, like one sound bite, one thing that you want people to take from all the stuff that we talked about? What's that one thing?
yeah, if you are looking to move more into the play-based world and it feels a little bit overwhelming, just pause and look at some of the things in your day and say, I'm directing this activity. I tell them how, why, when, where, how to do it. How can I swap that instead for a time and space that allows children to direct that? create some space where and time that they can decide what they do. Put out some materials and step back and see what happens and how that changes. Just start there.
I love it. I love that. You want to tell everyone where they can get in contact with you or see more about what you're doing?
Yeah, of course. I love to connect
Awesome.
with people. You can find me on
Yes.
Instagram. It's at kids.who.play. And always send me messages, ask me questions, do stuff over there. Send all your parenting questions my way as well. And I would love to connect with folks.
I love it. I love it. That's so great. Thank you, Laurel, so much for coming on. I love our conversation. It was great. And I really think there's a lot of value in what we talked about. So I'm excited for folks to hear about it. And thank you all for listening to this episode of Honoring Childhood, the podcast. And I will see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Honoring Childhood, the podcast. Make sure that you like and subscribe and leave me a comment down below to let me know what you thought about this episode. Make sure that you're also following the podcast wherever you may be listening. Also, be sure to check out my books and follow me over on Instagram at Honoring Childhood.